Hello everyone, welcome to the Lake Rejuvenation and Management course. This is a collaborative initiative by Bangalore University, Friends of Lakes, Biome, and Atri. The purpose of this course is to educate citizens on lake rejuvenation, covering both engineering and environmental aspects. Happy learning.
Our next speaker is Dr. Anand Kodavasar.
Rejuvenation, the central role of STPs. I've always believed that STPs in large metro cities are one of the major causes for pollution of the water bodies, lakes, and other water streams. This is based on our own experience in looking at the various STPs in the cities of Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, Delhi, and Pune, where we now have presence in these major cities. So how do STPs cause these lake pollution? Three cardinal laws or rules for a good STP are proper design, proper engineering, and then proper operation maintenance. So all these are required at 100% efficiency for an STP to work day after day after day for years together. A life cycle of an STP is typically 25 to 30 years. One of our oldest STPs is about 30 years old now, still performing well. But above all these three main considerations is what I call the zeroth law. This in chemical thermodynamics, there's a zeroth law which sits above all the other considerations. And that is selection of the most appropriate treatment technology for the size of STP we are talking about. We are talking about these urban STPs. Urban STPs meaning in the residential complexes, commercial complexes, IT parks, malls, hotels, hospitals, education institutions. Typically, these cover the urban STPs. Typical size of these STPs range from 25 KLD to the biggest one we have seen, which we are operating and maintaining, is ITPL, which is 3000 KLD, 3 MLD. These are some of the typical. And across the cities now, we find the size of the STPs is gradually going up. The average size now turns out to be around 600 to 800 KLD in the residential complexes. So let us take just to give you a background of STPs in Bangalore. There are more than 3,200 STPs in Bangalore. And we estimate more than 450 MLD, million liters per day of sewage under treatment, set to be under treatment in these STPs. Unfortunately, more than 85% of the STPs are dysfunctional to various degrees. Either they don't function at all, or they may be treating only 50% of the design load, or they may be treating the entire 100% but not meeting the quality standards, all of which are a very bad situation. And that is one of the main reasons the lakes are getting polluted. Most of these 450 MLD actually goes into the Vartur, Belandur kind of lakes. What is the main reason for dysfunctionality of these STPs? It is selection of the wrong technology, as I said, which sits above everything else, the zeroth law, wrong technology. And within the technology, once you select a technology, you need to ensure that you meet all the design criteria mandated by that technology. And that is not also happening in most of these STPs, whether it is SBR, MBBR, or MBR, or even next generation for that matter. Wrong technology, incorrect design, poor engineering, and therefore people see little benefit from these STPs and they don't operate. Why throw good money after bad? That is the question. So huge operation and maintenance costs, and therefore the STPs die a natural death. This is the case again in Pune and Chennai, NCR, Hyderabad, where we have branch offices. We have seen many STPs. The situation is the same. And in all these cities, more than 200 MLD, I would say, this is just an estimate, of sewage under treatment. Majority STP is dysfunctional. History repeats itself. Wrong technology, incorrect, little benefit, huge operation costs. So what are the STP diseases? In Bangalore, it is all SBR. Most of the vast majority of STPs are based on the SBR technology. And in Pune and the other cities, it is MBBR. Moving bed biofilm reactor. This is another technology for STP. These are the main diseases, but these can be corrected. Just to give you further background on these, more than 2,000 crores are lying idle in these STP assets already built, and most of them dysfunctional. And it takes hardly 20 to 25% of the investment to make these STPs work again, to rejuvenate, resuscitate these STPs and make them work. And what will be the benefit? Huge freshwater savings potential. As you remember, you recall 450 MLD is under treatment in these STPs. Typically, our recycle and reuse percentage has been about 60% in residential complexes. And in commercial complexes where there's a huge requirement for HVAC, cooling water use in the centralized air conditioning system, the recycle goes up as high as 85 to 90%. For instance, we are doing the Phoenix Mall here, the Marriott Hotel, 500, 650 KLD, more than 400 to 500 KLD is recycled and reused every day. That is the kind of potential we have when you have a good STP running in a treatment plant. Of course, huge freshwater savings potential, protect water bodies. These are some of the benefits. And for the communities, this is another major advantage, much more than the economic benefits of saving in freshwater costs. I believe it's going to be the water security, which is going to be most important and critical consideration in the coming years. Most of the communities where we operate and maintain, we recycle and reuse and give them back 60% of their water requirement. So they can be self-sufficient up to 60%. And the break-even point, that is the operating cost of an STP against what it gives back in return, is about 100 KLD. And beyond 100 KLD, the STP is minting money. It's literally a gold mine. If you're sitting with a 500, 600 or 1000 KLD STP, it is literally a gold mine. For instance, when we recycle for 400 or 500 kiloliters per day in these commercial complexes, it is straight away a return of 40 to 50,000 rupees per day. So these are some of the main benefits. So we have done several such audits of these dysfunctional STPs, and we have seen even if one has to spend 30, 40, 50 lakhs, the payback period is just a matter of months, 3, 4, 5 months maximum. So in all the audits we do of these STPs, when the STPs are dysfunctional, people come to us for a solution. We work out the ROI, the payback period. And this is the case after case after case, whether it is SBR, MBBR, or even MBR for that matter. The most recent one, we converted an MBR, 345 KLD MBR to acceleration. So now the norms mandated by the Honorable NGT as of April 30th, 2019, these are very good, excellent standards. If you see BOD less than 10, COD less than 50, TSS, total suspended solids, 20 milligram per liter or less, ammoniacal nitrogen 5 ppm or less, total nitrogen 10, total phosphorus 1. These are achievable, certainly. pH, there's not a major concern in domestic sewage. Fecal coliform 100, desirable. In MPM, in 100 ml, all units in milligram. So this is an excellent quality of water, which actually almost is similar to what the US EPA mandated in the 1990s for urban reuse. Urban reuse meaning you can use it for toilet flush, you can use it for irrigation on lawns and gardens where even children can come into skin contact with this treated water. You can use it for car wash, for common areas wash. And now, if you can do the nitrate control, total nitrogen control, I believe the PCB may even be inclined to let you recharge groundwater. Currently, it is not permitted because of the high nitrate level in the groundwater already. So this is another benefit if you introduce a denitrification stage in your STP. In all STPs which we now design, we introduce this denitrification stage. We have not done this for total phosphorus because it is a very simple matter of introducing it. Overnight, you can do the phosphorus control by chemical coagulation method. I will come to that a little later in this presentation. Typical cost sheet of a 650 KLD STP. This is an actual STP which we now executing in Pune. Energy costs, we compute all the mechanical equipment, the motors and their kilowatt rating, the number of hours they work, the kilowatt drawn and everything. Per day, the cost of energy is 4,500. Chemicals, the only chemical we use in domestic sewage is for disinfection, which is sodium hypochlorite. Manpower cost, this is the AMC cost for us. Spares, these are the typical routine preventive maintenance spares which we use, like bearings, bushers, oil, grease, lubricants, things like that, V-belts, annual maintenance setups. Apart from these regular preventive maintenance items, there are certain annual activities which need to be carried out, just like your Maruti service. Say 25,000 kilometer service, 50,000 kilometer service, there's some major work to be done. Typically, it is servicing of the filters, the tertiary filters, typically cleaning out the tanks maybe once in a year or once in 2 years, These are all I lump under the annual maintenance items. The total operating cost works out to about 8,600, or if you can see, 13 rupees per kiloliter. Compare it with freshwater cost, typically now 80 to 100 rupees or even more in Hyderabad. In fact, in the high-tech city area, it is about 180 to 200 rupees per kiloliter. In Delhi, the Delhi Municipal Corporation, Jal Board, supplies at 200 rupees per kiloliter. So you can see the huge benefit when you run an STP, which is delivering good quality water. The cost of treatment is very less, and this yields secondary quality water, which is good enough for all your secondary uses, as I said. So this is a return on the investment. ROI for the 650 KLD brand new greenfield STP. Savings in fresh water, 350. As I said, 60% you can save, recycle. Cost of 1 kiloliter tank of water, 100 rupees. It's a very conservative estimate now. During summer season, it goes up heavily. Savings in water cost, 35,000, net revenue, water security of the community. These are the benefits. So look at the cost of this brand new 650 KLD STP. Our electromechanic package cost 40 lakhs, estimated civil cost for the civil developer 45 lakhs, total cost of the STP 85 lakhs. Payback period hardly 242 days. So within 1 year, a brand new STP is paid back for itself. And after that, reduction in monthly maintenance cost per flat. This 650 KLD is contributed typically by about 1,000 flats or apartments, dwellings, household units. 35,000 into 30 divided by 1,000, 1,050 rupees per flat per month is what you can achieve in terms of reduction in monthly maintenance costs in the apartment complex. So this is the quality of water we can get if an STP works well. This was done sometime in January 2019. Day after day, we are getting this quality of water. 435 KLD MBBR STP converted to exhalation. So this is the basic background of STPs, what they can deliver, what they should deliver, and what are the major aspects of an STP which we should be aware of. The technology to be used, the right technology to be used, the correct design, engineering, and then operation maintenance. There's no such thing as I cannot make up for poor design by better operation and maintenance. There's no such thing. If it is badly designed, you have to redesign it. If it is poorly engineered, you have to re-engineer it and then take up the operation maintenance. So this is the basic biological treatment. At the center are the microbes which do the biological treatment. I'm looking at this as an aerobic treatment scheme, which is the most predominant STP technology in all these urban STPs, aerobic treatment. These microbes use the pollutants in the wastewater as their food, source of food. They need oxygen for respiration. They need nutrients, certainly, just like human beings. It is just live things, just like human beings. We need vitamins, we need food, we need oxygen. The only major difference between microbes and human beings is these microbes take the oxygen from the dissolved oxygen in the wastewater. Humans take it directly from the atmosphere. And we also need vitamins. Microbes, the other major difference, of course, the body weight. Microbes are maybe a few micrograms in weight, whereas humans are typically 60, 70, 80 kilograms. And therefore, we can withstand sudden changes in the environment, in our living environment, sudden changes in temperature, sudden changes in maybe other environmental factors. These microbes cannot. And therefore, they need to be shown a very uniform environment to which they are acclimatized, and then they perform their duty well. This is a growth reaction. More microbes are formed day after day after day. You start with 100 microbes, tomorrow you will have 110, the day after 120, but then you are limited by the amount of food which is available in that treatment plant, the amount of oxygen you are going to supply, and therefore you have to control the population of microbes to the level to which you had designed the original design of the treatment plant. And therefore, you are required to remove or evacuate the excess microbes, the excess sludge, as you call it, from the treatment plant on a regular basis. Apart from the growth reaction, there are other byproducts. Energy release, gases are produced, and other products, including water. The main gas produced in an aerobic reaction is carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide, if it is there in an atmosphere full of water vapor, which is what an STP is, if it is put in a basement room or some such thing, carbon dioxide plus water forms carbonic acid, which is highly corrosive. And that is one reason we need to have a very good exhaust and ventilation system. Exhaust ventilation system, not only for to prevent corrosion, but also for the health and safety of the people in the thing. The other reason, of course, then if you have these gases, carbon dioxide, the air blowers, if they are located in the same room, they'll be drawing the same carbon dioxide with air, and therefore some deterioration or degradation in the treatment performance happens. So this is a typical life cycle of a microbes. As I said, it's a growth reaction. So the population is full of, it's a mix of population, and this is the Gaussian curve of the population. And what we want to maintain or sustain in our population is the maximum amount of middle-aged bacteria, typically between 20 to 25 days. And that we achieve in these different STP technologies by various methods and mechanisms. In the activated sludge process, we recycle the settled sludge and keep it in the system for about 20 to 25 days. In the MBBR system, which is an attached growth regime, you control the factors in such a way that the bacteria attach themselves to the plastic media for about 20 to 25 days. It's a careful selection of design and other engineering criteria. So with that background, let us see what are the best STP technologies available, prevalent in Bangalore, as they are in other cities also. This is not related only to Bangalore. The same situation prevails all over India. So there's the classical extended aeration system, EAS system. There are anaerobic STPs. There's something called CACO STPs developed by the Central Weather Research Institute in Guindy, Chennai. CACO. EDOX, electrocoagulation, SBR, MBBR, and MBBR. So let us stick to the mainstream technologies. These are all voodoo technologies, I call them. Classical extended-aeration, SBR, MBBR, and MBR. These are the mainstream technologies, and how they fare in this urban STP situation is what we would like to present now. The STP guide gives you all the details of a good extended-aeration system, the design, the function, the performance, troubleshooting, design criteria, engineering criteria, and worked out examples. So I would suggest you can go to the STP guide and download it and get familiar with what an extended-aeration system is and what it does. And in fact, I can share with you, we are operating nearly 90 plants across these cities like Bangalore, Chennai, and Pune. All of them are based on the extended-aeration system, and all of them perform well. So we have absolutely no hiccups in any of these STPs. So extended-aeration activated sludge is the best. Again, I'm talking about the size of the STPs we are talking. I'm not denigrating or saying anything about the other technologies. Every technology is a good technology, but where it is used is very important. So let us go to the moving bed bioreactor. The only difference between this is the attached growth regime of the biomass. The biomass is not suspended in the aeration tank, but they attach themselves to the carrier plastic media, which then are suspended in the reactor. Plastic media to increase surface area, so you can carry a lot more population of bacteria in a limited volume of the bioreactor. This is one of the main advantages claimed for MBBR technology. But then it comes with certain additional requirements. MBBR technology requires primary sedimentation. That is, you have to remove the primary solids from any wastewater, whether it's domestic sewage or industrial wastewater. Primary sewage solids in domestic sewage, as we all know, is basically human feces. And if you do not remove it, then the MBBR is bound to suffer. And that's what happens in all the MBBRs we have seen. Sludge handling issues in MBBR is a well-known, accepted fact. Unless you do further conditioning, digestion, and other things, sludge handling becomes a major issue. And that is one reason we believe this MBBR technology is not suited in a residential or a commercial complex on a small scale. Sludge handling issues, and as I said, I have nothing against the technology. It is only the poor design and the poor engineering and the compromised kind of engineering or compromised kind of design which kills MBBR in these small plants. It is not appropriate for small STPs. I have not said again anything about the technology. As a chemical engineer, I totally understand, appreciate the advantages of fluidized bed reactor. It has been in use in chemical engineering practice for decades and decades. It's only recently introduced in STP sphere. And unfortunately, people have not understood the requirements for the design requirements of the engineering features of the MBBR technology. And that is one of the main reasons for failure of MBBR. not as a technology, but how it is applied, how it is designed, and how it is done in India particularly. I can jolly well design a 100 KLD MBBR plant, but it's going to be a very unwieldy size, and it is going to call for a lot of energy and totally inappropriate for a small STP. The MBBR technology was originally developed in the Norwegian Institute of Science and Technology. You can see each and every flow sheet has a primary sedimentation unit before it comes to the MBBR tank. The primary reason, of course, is that in the limited amount of reaction time or residence time or the retention time in the MBBR, the solids are not totally decomposed and stabilized. And therefore, these primary solids will escape through the MBBR tank and come to the secondary settling tank where they can create havoc. So this is what happens actually on the ground in all the MBBRs which we have seen in India in the last 30 years or so. One of the first MBBRs I saw was in the Electronic City for one of the software majors. They had just started, and I saw an MBBR, and we refused to take over the operation maintenance of this very poorly, badly engineered MBBR system. And finally, it was scrapped because it never gave the desired results. So proper primary sedimentation is a must under all circumstances. The MBBRs we have inspected skip this and just end up tankering out the sludge, which is against the law, in fact. So typical issues with MBBR in India: no primary sedimentation, primary sewage solids, feces cannot be digested, generic plastic carrier media. Apart from these primary sedimentation requirement, which I consider to be the heart of an MBBR technology, at the heart of the MBBR technology, there are other drawbacks and defects and lacunae as well when it comes to MBBR STPs in India. Generic plastic carrier media use, it doesn't satisfy the density requirement, roughness requirement, surface area, not tailor-made for MBBR use. The other engineering challenge is you cannot transfer more oxygen in less time using coarse bubble diffusers. We are forced to use coarse bubble diffusers in MBBR tanks because of the interference from the plastic carrier media. You cannot put in fine bubble diffusers because fine bubble diffusers will coalesce. All the fine bubbles will coalesce because of the interference from the plastic media. And also, it is very difficult to put in fine bubble diffusers because cleaning the fine bubble diffuser, lifting them up, cleaning them becomes difficult in an MBBR tank unless you shut it down. So that is not a good thing to do. Fine bubble diffusers cannot be used due to media interference, have to maintain a high dissolved oxygen. This is something I think not many of the MBBR proponents have understood, the requirement for a high dissolved oxygen of 3 to 4 ppm. You have to maintain a 3 to 4 ppm dissolved oxygen even to maintain a very thin film of coating of the bacteria on the plastic media. Even a 0.5 to 1 mm thick coating or film of bacteria can be sustained only if you have a 3 to 4 ppm dissolved oxygen. And now this imposes a huge energy requirement to maintain a high dissolved oxygen in the MBBR tank. Again, it is not warranted in a small STP. Shallow MBBR tanks. Typically, MBBR STPs are put in basements where you don't have more than 3-4 meters of depth available. Again, this makes it less efficient, and more so because it is compounded by the fact that you are forced to use coarse bubble diffusers, which are inherently less energy efficient than the fine bubble diffusers. Primary solids, feces slip out of the MBBR tank, dead microbes slough off from the MBBR tank. The other major issue, in fact, this is I don't stop laughing at this. Plate and tube settler is used for biomass settling after the MBBR tank. Plate and tube settler is a legacy from a water treatment plant technology, that sphere, where we use alum and lime. These chemical sludges can be settled by using a plate and tube settler, and the advantages accrue when you use a plate and tube settler. But for biological sludge, plate and tube settler just simply cannot work. You will understand why from the next slide. The sludge and solids adhere to the plate and tubes and then become septic and escape out. So nothing happens, no settlement happens. Thin slurry from plate settler, difficult to dewater. Sludge requires thickening, digestion, conditioning before dewatering. And therefore, that's why I say it's not appropriate. This technology is not appropriate for small STPs. So typically what happens, we have seen when we have audited nearly 50 to 60 of these dysfunctional MBBRs. The first thing we do is we pull out the plastic media and see whether there's any coating of bacteria on this. You can see there's only the plastic, black plastic media floating around in the MBBR tank without any attached biomass growth. Whereas this is what it should be. This is the K2 carrier media of Anox Kalnes, who originally developed MBBR along with the Norwegian Institute of Science and Technology. So this is a small sketch which shows why you need to maintain a high dissolved oxygen of 3 to 4 ppm, because from the bulk liquid, which is the MBBR tank, and this is the plastic media, on the surface, there's a growth, the film growth here. There is a DO profile which starts from 3 to 4 from the bulk liquid, and as it enters the film, the dissolved oxygen is consumed by the intervening film and the bacteria, and by the time it reaches the plastic media surface, the dissolved oxygen becomes zero, at which point these microbes at the plastic surface die. And once they die, they lose their ability to cling and attach to the surface, and they slough out. And when the dead bacteria sloughs out of the MBBR tank, this is called the sloughing action, they also carry along with it some live bacteria. So what comes out of an MBBR tank, which is supposed to be settled in this plate and tube settler, is a mixture sloughed off biomass, dead plus living biomass comes out of the MBBR tank, which then again, if you put a plate and tube settler, it will attach to the plate and tube settler. The bacteria doesn't know, it doesn't have the brains to understand that it has now come out of the MBBR and it is now in the settling tank, and therefore it has to settle. It will do what it knows best. It will attach itself to the plastic media, the tube and plate settler, attach itself, and after some time it will die and then come out of the settling tank itself. So what does this DO 3 to 4 ppm mean in real terms? It means the driving force for dissolved oxygen from the gas phase to the liquid phase is very little. As we all know, the saturation value of dissolved oxygen in clear water is 8 ppm. It's even much less in the wastewater, typically maybe about 7.5 dissolved oxygen. Therefore, the driving force is less, and therefore you have to expend a lot more energy to maintain this dissolved oxygen of 3 to 4 ppm. 3 to 4 ppm itself is very high, and therefore, and in a shallow tank, you lose most of the air to the atmosphere. Not much transfer happens to the bulk liquid from the gas phase. So inherently energy inefficient. But all this energy inefficiency can be compensated for in a large municipal plant where you do not have to do sludge recirculation. Sludge recirculation in a large municipal plant calls for, let us say, 22 hours of sludge recirculation with 100, 200 HP motors. There the energy saving comes in. In a small STP, we don't use sludge recirculation by pumps. We use airlift, and therefore the benefit of energy savings and therefore cost savings in a large municipal plant does not happen in a small STP. Therefore, all the advantages of the MBBR are lost when you want to transplant this technology on a small scale. So this is the main message I wish to convey. So this is typically the profile, oxygen profile, dissolved oxygen profile in the bulk liquid. Let us say it's 3 to 4 ppm, and as it enters the film, it drops. This is the profile, and the time it reaches the plastic carrier media surface, it becomes zero, and therefore the bacteria dies. So there are different kinds of layers here. Aerobic, anoxic, anaerobic layers. So in summary, MBBRs we have seen and why they have failed: no primary sedimentation, less than 50% treatment, filter press never used. As I said, the dewatering is a major challenge here in MBBR systems unless you do the thickening, digestion and conditioning. No bacterial coating, dissolved oxygen level is very low, sludge is typically tankered out. And we have seen in many MBBR STPs, they have introduced sludge recirculation system in the STP, MBBR STP. MBBR technology is developed to do away with sludge recirculation. People have not even understood that basic nuance of what an MBBR should be. So not one MBBR STP working. We have ourselves converted more than 18 MBBRs to extended generation. We are operating it in Bangalore, Pune, Himachal, ranging from 50 to 800 KLD. There is a wide range of MBBRs we have converted. And soon 150 and 475 in Hinjewadi for a corporate. Okay, that's about MBBR. Let's go to the sequencing batch reactor quickly. So let me just give you a definition of what the SBR means. In SBR, you are treating the daily generation of sewage from a residential, commercial complex, educational institute, or whatever mall in 3 equal batches. Just for a moment, think whether in a residential complex or a commercial complex or anywhere else, sewage is getting generated in 3 equal installments. It is not. And therefore, by definition itself, SBR should be thrown out when we want to apply it in this kind of a situation where there are distinct peak flow hours. Distinct peak flow hours in a residential complex happens between 6 to 9 a.m. in the morning. There's a morning peak, and there is a much smaller evening peak. During the morning peak hours, nearly 40 to 50% of the daily generation, average daily flow comes in. And therefore, SBR is inherently unsuitable for application in these kind of situations. So, but let me go through some of the other drawbacks and other defects and deficiencies of SBR technology when applied on a small scale. Again, as a chemical engineer, I understand totally the advantage of a batch reaction for a first order biological reaction. Batch reaction is extremely good, but it is not appropriate in a small plant. If the BWSSB asks me to design a 40, 30 MLD plant, I will go for MBBR or SBR. Definitely not for acceleration. Acceleration loses all its advantages when we are talking about the large scale STPs. So SBR happens in this sequence. First, it is the SBR tank is filled. It takes about 1.5 hours. Then the tank is sealed. There's no input, there's no output. It is sealed and then reacted. So the bacteria in the SBR tank react with the batch of sewage you have introduced into the tank, which is 1/3 of the tank. The top 1/3 is what you can use for the filling and decanting. So that is reacts about for 4 hours, and then you shut off the air and let the bacteria settle. And a clear supernatant layer is formed, which you then decant it. Decant for one hour, the treated water, and the sludge stays in this tank itself. Therefore, in this SBR system, you are doing away with the need for a secondary settling tank and a sludge recycle. And therefore, you are achieving the 20-25 days sludge age by just retaining the sludge for a period of 20 to 25 days. It's a very simple technology. So 1 hour fill, 4 hours react, 1 hour settle, 1 hour decant. You have used up about 7 hours, and there's about a small amount of time, which is an idle time where you can do the normal maintenance activities. So this is the sequence of operations which happens in an SBR STP. As I said, I have no issues with technology. As a chemical engineer, I understand the benefits of a batch reaction in this particular case. Certainly, batch reaction is extremely good, but then the advantages do not accrue on a small scale. Aims to save space and energy. Two main advantages claimed for SBR technology is that it saves space. That is, the footprint is smaller and energy savings are accrued. How are the energy savings accrued? As you know, during the settled stage, you are shutting off the air to the tank. And during the decant stage, you are again shutting off the air to the tank. But then the energy efficiency or the energy savings comes only when you have two sets of air blowers, because there in the STP, there are other tanks like the collection tank, the equalization tank, the sludge holding tank, the clarified water tank, which need to be aerated even while these things are happening in the SBR tank. And therefore, unless you have two sets of air blowers, the advantage of energy efficiency or energy conservation does not happen. In a municipal treatment plant, by default, you will have multiple SBR tanks, you will have multiple air blowers, and therefore it is a natural corollary that you can get these benefits only in a large municipal treatment plant. Again, in a large municipal treatment plant, you don't have a concept of a huge buffer tank or equalization tank, which is the bugbear in these small STPs, where you need to hold one batch of sewage while the other batch is getting treated. You have to hold one batch in the buffer tank or the equalization tank, which is minimum 8 hours. In a municipal plant, there is no concept of an equalization or buffer tank, because across the city, somebody is having a bath, somebody is using the kitchen, somebody is using discharging water, more or less uniform flow in a large. As the size of the STP goes higher, the flow gets more or less uniform. And therefore, SBR is ideally suited when there is uniform flow. And you don't need, you don't have a recourse for a buffer tank or an equalization tank. So these are some of the key considerations in SBR. Aims saves space and energy, and this is at the heart of a SBR technology. As I said, every technology, you can identify one unit or one process or one stage in the treatment to be the heart of the system. In the externalization or activated sludge, it is the secondary settling tank, the heart of the system. If the secondary settling tank does not work, the STP fails. In the MBBR, it is the primary sedimentation unit. In the SBR, it is the decant stage, and you need to have these long weir decanters so that the upflow velocity is attenuated, totally under control, so that the settled solids at the bottom of the tank are not pulled up. And this is missing in all the SBRs we have seen, almost 90-95% of the SBRs. Of course, of late, we have started getting these decanters, but without these decanter, nothing works. Pipe decanters are used, very, very rudimentary pipe decanters. Oversized collection tank, as I said, is required, which typically needs a minimum of 8 hours. Power savings only with 2 sets of air blowers, as I have explained. Area and power benefits only for large plants beyond 10 MLD with uniform flow again. So SBR is ideally suited in large size STPs, not appropriate for small STPs, residential, commercial, where distinct peak flows require larger equalization tank. You can decant only the top 1/3 of the tank. As I said, you can, for one batch, you can use only the top 1/3 of the SBR tank. And therefore, the SBR tank by design, by definition, must have a retention time of 24 hours as against 14 to 16 hours for a domestic sewage externalization tank. So there itself, the equalization tank is bigger, the aeration tank is bigger, and because you get very thin slurry, excess sludge out of the SBR tank, you need a much larger sludge holding tank. Odor nuisance, more energy, larger footprint, more equipment. This is the bottom line when it comes to SBR applied on a small scale. Sludge handling is a universally understood, appreciated issue in SBR systems because you are removing this excess sludge. Remember the biological reaction. It is a growth reaction. You have to remove excess sludge on a regular basis. When you remove the excess sludge from a flat bottom tank, you will get only thin slurry, excess sludge. Whereas in a conventional externalization, you are getting thick sludge. Thick sludge is easy to dewater as against thin slurry. This is one of the major issues. Flat bottom SBR, thin excess sludge, conventional thick sludge, and that's why the thing doesn't work. Sludge handling is a major issue in SBR again. So this is the typical one SBR which we converted actually in a large, one of the most popular malls in Bangalore, a 500 KLD SBR STP which was dysfunctional. We converted it. It is now more than 3 or 4 years now. We get day after day after day. Even today, on a Saturday after a heavy Friday night's rush, the quality is much better than what you're seeing here. One of the biggest malls, SBR is upgraded in October 2017. We have been operating it and maintaining it. So that's about MBBR. So again, let me reiterate, I have nothing against these technologies. As a chemical engineer, I understand fluid as bed reactions, I understand batch reactions, but then again, it's a matter of scale. Anaerobic bioreactor for micro STPs, again, we prefer the DWAT system, slightly improved DWAT system to suit. DWAT actually was developed for application for low-cost rural sanitation in developing countries. But we have found it to be useful when applied to micro STPs in an urban setting, in a metro urban setting. So we have used it in a few of these, again, based on the DWAT's handbook of Ludwig Sasse. A 50 KLD NBR at HDFC school in Hadapsar, this is the quality of treated water. 60 KLD NBR in Kundalali, a residential complex. You can see what comes out of the NBR tank, what is after the activated carbon filter, and what is after the disinfection. Good, clear water. So ideally suited for micro STPs. So membrane bioreactor, again, no problem with the technology, reliability and cost issues, not mature for small STPs, still a matter of serious R&D, good future prospects. In fact, I believe the future of STP is in the MBR when you have to depend on treated domestic sewage for potable water generation. So this will be a good pre-treatment for an RO system. Good prospects, work in progress, unfortunately. This is a typical flow sheet. I don't think we'll go into that. There are different kinds of membranes, different configurations, flat plate, hollow fiber, and things like that. The key takeaways from this part of the presentation is, from a long-term perspective, please note all the adjectives. I have used it very on a very considered basis. Excineration is still the best available, practicable, most appropriate technology as on date. I'm not commenting on the other technologies as bad or not appropriate. Anaerobic CACO edox are unsuitable. This is the recommendation we gave to the KSPCB. In fact, this presentation is based on a study we conducted on an assignment given to us by the KSPCB to study all these alternate technologies and give a recommendation. So this is the recommendation we had given. Anaerobic CACO edox are totally unsuitable and should not be approved. SBR, MBB are inappropriate for mini and small STPs, and we gave some guidelines for design and engineering of these STPs as well. We just simply did not offhand throw them out. We said you can accept it provided they have these features, the design features, engineering features, but if you put in all these requisite features, mandatory features, these become unwieldy in a small, mini and small STP. MBR is for the future, but only when all current issues are resolved. There are a lot of issues, believe me. We have seen it ourselves. We have ourselves converted 3 MBR STPs to excineration because people were not able, even very highly reputed builders were not able to manage these MBRs. But the question then, isn't modern technology always better? This is the question the chairman of the Pollution Control Board asked us when we converted one SBR for the mall to excineration. So we put in this small slide for him. In Tokyo or in Japan, bullet trains run between intercity runs from Tokyo to Osaka, Tokyo to Kyoto, 300, 400 kilometers away. Most modern technology, bullet trains. But within Tokyo, the suburban local network still uses the old type coaches. Metro, conventional technology, most appropriate for within Tokyo. Therefore, just because you don't go by the tags of modern or high tech or anything, what we should look for is what is the most appropriate technology. And therefore, the conclusion is excineration is the best technology for mini and small STPs. And this is the categorization of these sizes. 10 to 80 KLD micro STPs, ANBR, anaerobic baffled reactor, that is based on the DWATS anaerobic system. Unfortunately now, if the nitrogen control comes in for nitrogen control, this anaerobic may fall out of favor because it is very difficult to control nitrogen from an anaerobic system. You need to go for breakpoint chlorination, which becomes very expensive to remove the ammonia. Ammonia doesn't get converted to nitrate in an anaerobic system, unlike in an aerobic, where all forms of nitrogen, whether it's ammoniacal nitrogen, organic nitrogen, gets converted to oxidized to nitrate. And nitrate is what we remove in the denitrification tank. Because we develop bacteria which eat up the oxygen which use the oxygen from the nitrate. 100 to 1000 kiloliters per day mini STP excineration is most suited. 1000 to 5000 KLD STP, small STP excineration. In fact, recently, about a year back, we designed a 5000 KLD STP for a company, Chiyoda Engineering, a Japanese company in Qatar, and they specified they wanted only excineration for a 5000 KLD plant. So we designed that and it was quite successful. More than 5000 KLD, we will look at MBBR and SBR beyond about 10 MLD, provided we get uniform flow. The benefits of SBR kick in only when there is uniform flow. So that concludes the first part of the STP technologies, what is best suited, what STP can give. And if you get the quality of water which I put up, which is the NGT mandated quality, I believe 50% of the lake problems will be solved, provided all the STPs work. But unfortunately, as I said, 80-85% of the STPs in Bangalore, in Hyderabad is even worse. I understand the percentage of dysfunctionality is more than 90% in Hyderabad. Same case in Pune, Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, the problem is same. So biological nutrient removal, BNR, basics and methods. Contents, forms of nitrogen, definition, nitrogen cycle, reactions, conditions, moral of the story. We'll quickly go through these. For nitrogen and phosphorus removal, as I said, the bacteria need nitrogen and phosphorus, macronutrients for their growth. Unfortunately, in domestic sewage, nitrogen and phosphorus is in excess of what the bacteria can use up. And therefore, there's a high level of residual nitrogen and residual phosphorus coming out of a treatment plant. Unless you put in additional treatment stages for removal of nitrogen, for removal of phosphorus, the lake eutrophication is bound to happen. So this is what it means. Nitrogen is available in various forms in domestic sewage. Total nitrogen, TN, between 25 to 30 milligrams per liter. But sometimes it is baffling me. I have seen in some of the software units, the total nitrogen going up as high as 80 to 90 milligrams per liter. We are trying to figure out where this is coming from. Total nitrogen consists of total gel down nitrogen, TKN, plus NO2 and NO3. TKN is defined as NH3, ammoniacal nitrogen plus organic nitrogen. Organic nitrogen. Ammonia, NH3, ammonia is not in gaseous form. It is actually in NH4 form, ammoniacal nitrogen, but I'm using it interchangeably. Organic nitrogen, typically amino acids and proteins, example, urea, uric acid. Nitrate is present, nitrate is present, nitrogen gas may be present in the cycle of the treatment of nitrogen. Refractory nitrogen. Some nitrogen compounds are refractory. That means they are not biodegradable. And therefore, you will face problems if you run into refractory nitrogen. Thankfully, we don't have too much of refractory nitrogen compounds in domestic sewage. There are 3 stages in the cycle of nitrogen removal. Ammonification, that is all forms of... Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but due to lack of time, can I request you to please shorten the presentation and present it, because there's one more speaker who has to present.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
So 3 stages in the cycle of nitrogen removal: ammonification, nitrification, and denitrification. This is all accomplished. Let me not go through all these reactions. Enough to say that all forms of nitrogen in raw sewage is converted to nitrate at the end of the aeration tank. And from there, you take it out, the nitrate form, and the bacteria which does the denitrification uses the oxygen in the nitrate rather than the dissolved oxygen, and therefore releases nitrogen gas. And that's how nitrification, nitrogen control is accomplished in biological nitrogen removal. Nitrifiers, strict aerobes, dissolved oxygen level. These are for the nitrification. So nitrification is again pH dependent. There are some optimum pH levels. Nitrification consumes alkalinity, and therefore you must have sufficient alkalinity in your domestic sewage for nitrification to happen. So these are some of the typical conditions. So this is what we do for denitrification. We use this. This is the modified Lutz-Kettinger process. Pre-denitrification is what we recommend for these small STPs, where you have a mixed liquor recycle coming back. You introduce an anoxic reactor between the equalization tank and the aerobic tank, where the denitrification happens and the effluent comes out with less than 10 milligram. You can do post denitrification also, but this becomes more operator dependent. And there's something called Barden-Foe process, which is very complicated. And unless you want nitrogen to be less than 1 ppm, 2 ppm, you will not go for such a complicated system. So moral of the story, wastewater cannot be denitrified unless it is first nitrified. That happens in an aerobic system. Organic nitrogen must be converted to ammonia. It happens very readily by hydrolysis. Denitrification calls for both aerobic and anoxic stages. Pre-denitrification, as I said, modified Lutz-Kettinger process. Post-denitrification, Barden-Foe and Michigan. So phosphorus. Now nitrogen, we can control it to less than 10. In fact, in some of our plants, we are controlling to less than 5 ppm nitrogen. We have been able to do that, especially with a high degree of recycle, MLR recycle. Phosphorus. Phosphorus is highly reactive, never found in elemental form, organic form, generic, into water bodies through runoff, as the previous speaker said, from agriculture use of fertilizer, leaching from soil, and domestic sewage, of course. This is the cultural pollution. Forms of phosphate: orthophosphate, the simplest; polyphosphate hydrolyzed readily to get converted to the simplest orthophosphates. Organophosphate, typically mainly in industrial wastewater, do not have to worry about this. Typically 2 to 5 or 6 milligram per liter in sewage. And there are 2 ways of removing phosphorus: chemical methods, biological methods. And surprisingly, we have found that the chemical method suits best for these small STPs, and in fact, even large STPs. We have done a graphical representation of crossover between chemical and biological. We found that the chemical coagulation phosphorus removal remains the preferred form in terms of the capex and opex over a 4-year return on investment basis. Chemical coagulation scores our biological treatment. Ferric chloride is used, aluminum sulfate is used, combination of dosing points. As I said, we prefer to dose it in the aeration tank, at the head of the aeration tank, at the outlet of the aeration tank. This is called co-precipitation. This is the simplest form of chemical removal of phosphorus. And typically we have the weight ratios, how much ferric chloride is required per milligram of phosphorus. We all know that. So we start with the required dosage of these chemicals. And similarly for alum to phosphorus, 9.6 to 1. So there is a biological treatment method which uses an anaerobic system. I will not go into that. As I said, we have figured out now, we have done an Excel sheet format taking into account all the capex and opex, and we have found that the chemical coagulation removal is best suited for these small STPs. So with that, I will now conclude. So this is the typical A to O process is what we recommend. And anaerobic, we do not recommend this. This is what happens if you want to put a biological phosphorus removal. You have an anaerobic stage followed by a denitrification stage, which is the anoxic tank, and the aerobic stage, and then the secondary settling, sludge recycle, and this is the mixed liquor recycle for denitrification. This is the thing which you should be using for these small STPs. Anaerobic, anoxic, aerobic, and then the sludge recycle and the MLR recycle. So that concludes our presentation on STP technologies, how it can deliver good quality water, which a lake can tolerate, in fact, and nitrogen and phosphorus removal. So thank you all for attending the session and giving me an opportunity. Thank you.